journey, and I think I've shared with you that the journey has been eye-opening to me. I have enjoyed it, and one of the byproducts of it is where we're going to go. We finished up verse 8, but in order to jump into 9, we need to connect with verse 8. And in verse 8, the end of verse 8 in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, we've been talking about the man of lawlessness. And sometimes when you talk about something or someone, it seems like they're the focus. But there's always a purpose in that. So when you read in the scriptures and we read about Satan or we read about evil people, there's always a purpose. And in verse 8, where we saw that after certain things, the lawless one would be revealed, that's going to happen. But Paul, in a very, can I say it, pithy? Very short little sentence there, finishes it out and says, whom the Lord will slay with the breath of his mouth and bring to an end by the epiphany, the appearance of his parousia, of his coming. And with that, we see that even though we've been talking about the man of lawlessness, we see that the real hero shows up and, as they say, saves the day, which he does. So when we finish verse 8, we see that Jesus is going to conclude this part of human history with the man of lawlessness, who you should by now know to be the Antichrist. He brings him to an end by the epiphany, the appearance of his parousia. And there's the reason that we have to connect there is because in the beginning of verse 9, there's another parousia, and it's the parousia of the Antichrist. He has a showing as well. But the difference is the difference between us talking about fruit. And we have an apple, and we have an orange. They're both fruit, or we could say then they're both a parousia, an appearance. And yet you bite into an apple, and it's a totally different experience than biting into an orange, especially if you haven't peeled it yet. So we can say they're both fruit, and yet, some people are allergic to one or the other. They're not the same. So when we see at the end of verse 8 that there's an epiphany of the parousia, when Jesus, his presence is there, when the word epiphany, which at first I had forgotten that it's not just a manifestation. That's a different word. Epiphany is a manifestation in style. It's like, wow! It's big, it's huge, it's a manifestation. It's not just an appearance, like sometimes if you watch a thing, special appearance by so-and-so, because they showed up and then they walked away. No, it's a showing up in style, and we know from reading other parts of the scripture that it's not just a showing up, cameo appearance, but it's the showing up of the king, the judge, and he takes care of business, which includes, according to Revelation 19, 18, okay, somewhere in Revelation, that the Antichrist and his chief number one henchman, the false prophet, are both cast alive into the lake of fire. So when we read here that verse 8, yeah, okay, we've been talking about the Antichrist, and he's going to be doing his thing, and we're going to actually talk about him a little more. It's all tempered by the fact that the judge, Jesus, is coming. The King of Kings, the Lord of Lords. And when he comes, it's the end of the Antichrist. So we have then in verse 8 the apple, if you will, the parousia of Jesus, And then in verse 9, we have the other parousia, the orange. That is the one whose parousia is in accord with the activity of Satan. And actually, many of your translations, if not all of them, will have that translated as coming, and we've discussed the parousia before. But this very transition between verse 8 and verse 9 shows us that it cannot be the coming. It cannot be the coming of the Antichrist, because he is already here. It's his presence. So the word coming doesn't work, even though that's in our translations. So by now, again, parousia should be in your mind as presence. And the Antichrist has a presence. It's obvious that he has a presence. And you can see that in the present because we're, what are we, in July? The election's in November. There's a certain, depending on your bent, if you have a bent toward a certain candidate, it doesn't matter whether they're a good person or a bad person. If they're your candidate, man, you're 100% in. And they could come out and misspeak. I'm sorry, did I just say that? Lie, and it doesn't matter to you. It's like, well, they misspoke, so let's move on. His parousia, his presence is going to be such that the world's going to look at him, and so what if he crushes this group and he crushes this group? And so what if, I mean, he does make an agreement with Israel for 3.5 years. That's going to create some buzz around the world. It doesn't matter. His parousia is present, and it's powerful. But here's the thing. Whereas on the one hand, we have the epiphany of the presence of Jesus, the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, the one who comes back and all he has to do is speak and things fall down. This parousia, we find in verse 9, is in accordance with the activity or the working of Satan. Now last week we covered John 8 verse 44 a little bit, where Jesus is speaking to the group of leaders who, he just calls them what they are. Your lives are lived according to your father. And that would be Satan. He's a liar. He's a liar. And that's what he does. We tried to get across last week that lying is so much more than the modern day cultural translation as misspeak. And I thought about that, and I thought, you know, let me hit home with the church. Let me hit home with you. Okay, Kathy and I are in need. I can throw out any number. I'll change it. I'm going to say we're in need of $10,000. We need your help because I need to go to a special convention that's only for pastors just like me, humble men. But really, what my wife and I are going to do is we're going to go to Vegas. We're going to stay in the Luxor, not just in this part of the Luxor, but this part of the Luxor. And I need at least $9,000 just to gamble. But I tell you that I need $10,000 so I can go to this special convention for humble servants like me. And then you find out when we come back and I'm all suntanned and somebody says how the convention went, and somehow it slips that, yeah, the Luxor was great. It's like, wait, I thought you were going to like some, you know, the Sahara Desert where you could be alone like a monk. And I tell you, well, I misspoke. And you see that there's $10,000 of church money that has gone into the hands of the pastor and out to any number of awful things that are not connected with heaven, but they're connected with somewhere else. And I call it misspeak. See, the heinousness of a lie cuts deep. But when you have ears to not hear and eyes to not see, then you will embrace anything and you call it a duck and it wags its tail and barks at you, and you call it a duck, it's like your eyes will see what your eyes want to see. So when this man of lawlessness shows up and he starts to maneuver in this world according to Paul and according to what I see in Daniel, according to what I see in Revelation, it's all of his activity is going to be in accordance with the activity of Satan. That will mean not good things, not righteous things, not holy things, but the exact opposite. It will include the height of deception, the height of unholiness, the height of blasphemy, which is how he is described again and again in the book of Daniel and Revelation. So we see that this man, the description of his parousia is not a manifestation, an epiphany, like the Lord of Lords and the King of Kings, but rather his parousia is in accord with hell and lying and, going beyond lying, murder and everything else that is attached to hell and to Satan. So there's nothing about the Antichrist that has anything with regards, any attachment to the word redemption. There's no redemption in the name Antichrist or in the Man of Lawlessness, because it's all attached to hell. Now we find two things listed, the last part of verse 9 and the beginning of verse 10, and these, in accordance with the activity of Satan, there's two manifestations. There's two means employed that will work out the activity of Satan. And what are those two things? There's two separate things. There's the power, signs, and wonders of verse 9, and then there's with all the deception of wickedness in verse 10. And in looking at this, there's, because you've read in the scriptures in various places where there's power, there's signs, there's wonders. And typically the word powers is associated with miracles. And typically it comes in association with divine power, with God's power. And it works out on this earth in what we call miracles. And so you see Jesus show up on a scene, and here's a guy who has never seen his whole life. Here's a guy who hasn't walked. He's been paralyzed, and on it goes, leprosy and dead people. And the divine power of God shows up, and this man sees, and this man walks, and the leper is cleaned, and the dead rise. You can't get around calling that power. You just can't. But there's something interesting about this as it relates to, because we see it in the book of the Revelation, and we see it here because he says specifically that in accordance with the activity, the workings of Satan, we have power. But here is a problem, not so much with the truth as with our thinking, is that we see, or perhaps you have if you've thought about it, that because it says that the Antichrist works with power and signs and wonders, that he has the power, and it happens. But here's the thing. That kind of divine power only comes from God. Doesn't come from hell, because hell, that is to say, the prince of hell, Satan, was created. He was not self-created. God made Lucifer. And Lucifer at one point said, "Yeah, you know what? I'm pretty good. I'm pretty smart. And you know what? That guy, why does he get all the credit? And God said, yeah, really, when it gets down to it here, there's only room for one God. So Satan was kicked out. But keep in mind, if Satan is who he is portrayed to be in Isaiah, he was the chief angel. And it appears that the chief angel, when he left heaven and took a third of the angels with him, he went with all the power he had that God gave him in heaven. But you have to then answer the question, who created the heavens and the earth? Was it the chief angel? Not according to the scripture. There's only one who created, and that was God. So the chief angel, Lucifer, the star of the morning, is kicked out, and with him a third of the angels of heaven, and he begins his own little domain, which he tries to make sure is not little, and he takes all the power he had as the chief angel in heaven, and he uses that. But we have to always go back to, where did his power come from? He has creative, am I saying that correctly? He has the power that was given to him in his creation. He does not have the ability to create. Okay? So when we read then that the Antichrist shows up and he has the power associated with the activity of Satan, we understand that he's going to be able to probably do things that you and I cannot. I mean, as the chief angel of heaven, I honestly, I can't go, I don't know what that means. I don't know what that looks like. But he can't say, glass of water, and there it is. He can't do that. He cannot create. But whatever power Satan has, and we know he has amazing power to influence, and he has the ability, he's called the angel of light. Okay? An angel of light, so here I am. And it looks good, but it's like taking a sip of vanilla. It may smell good, but man, it tastes awful. Not vanilla ice cream, by the way. So, this man will have power in accord with the activity of Satan, but it will not be creative power. So he can't just go, I don't like you. I don't like you. You know, he can't do that. What can he do is influence the world for evil. And if you think about it, that's pretty amazing. The influence that a person can have. We haven't seen that in modern day political system, have we? Right? Influence? No. We go on after the power and we deal with signs and wonders. Signs and wonders come as a package deal, although we can find the word signs by itself, but we will never find wonders by itself. Hadn't thought about that before until I looked at this. It's like, oh, that's interesting. And we get into, and this is where I have a hard time, and even though I've looked at it a lot, I don't feel comfortable 100% with my conclusion. However, I will give you what I have. The signs are a mark or a token by which anything is known or distinguished. And if you think about it, when the angels showed up to the shepherds, what did they say? And this shall be a sign unto you. This shall be a token unto you. This will be something that will identify what you need to recognize. What will you find? A babe, wrapped in what is called swaddling clothes, or anyway. So that would be a sign. But later on, we find that there are signs and wonders associated with certain things. The signs are the higher of the two. They can be used alone. A sign points beyond itself. It signifies something. But because this is all associated with the activity of Satan, which includes lies and lie, or a lie sign, tries to signify something as being real and true that is neither. Therefore, it destroys, it wrecks, it deceives. So, just as a magician can make you see certain things, and we'll have he's called an illusionist. We have an illusionist come to camp who loves the Lord, and he's just a great guy, and we'll sit down at the table with him, and he'll do tricks in front of us, and we'll be sitting right in front of him at the table, and we will not know how it's done. And I can say that because I've sat around that table over the last 30 years with a number of different people, and I have sat right there almost at every one, and the end result is always the same. Nobody can figure out how he does it. He's good. And he's just an illusionist who loved Jesus. Can you imagine this guy? The illusions that he can come up with? I can't. I mean, I can't. It's real and it's there. The wonders, and this is where, remember, wonders doesn't come by itself in the scriptures. This is a signal act, a wonder, a miracle. It's the lesser of the two words, signs and wonders. It's never used alone in the New Testament, I should have said that. For the pagan world also had wonders. And it means something that astonishes or leaves you jaw-dropped. Whoa, cool. So what do we see here? That one of the things that the man of lawlessness will have is the ability to dumbfound, astonish, to, make the quarter appear out of your ear, so to speak. However that can work to dissuade the crowd from looking up. You can't look up. According to what we've already seen in 2 Thessalonians 2, it's always look at me. I am the end all. I'm going to go sit in my little throne here in the temple of God. And you can worship, that's fine. So that's how that's going to work. And that's the first part of his parousia, the manifestation that's according to the workings of Satan. The second one is found in verse 10. And with all the deception of wickedness for those who perish. With all the deception of falsehood for those who are perishing. Deception. All of you have been deceived at one point, and you know how you feel with that. We hate it. This man of sin's whole ministry is going to be one of deception. And it has to be if he keeps doing this. Only look at me. Keep your eyes on me. I am God. Don't look away. So there's that deception. And then there's the matter of the second part of that, the deception of wickedness. It's a package deal. There is an entire religion, by the way, which I won't name for you to, I'll let you discover on your own. But one of their instructions is you have the right to deceive your listener in order to get them to participate with you. And I've had them at my door. And I've said, this is true. And they said, no, that's not true. I said, yes, I've read it in your book. No, it's not there. All right then, I guess we don't really have anything to talk about because you're going to stand there and lie to me as you look me in the eye. When it comes to the deception of wickedness, no one can afford the results of that because all of these things, if you remember, deal with eternal things, not with a temporary. I mean, I was standing in a line at Disneyland years ago when they still had the tickets, and a guy came up and said, man, I bought these tickets and I can't use them. Here, I'll sell them to you for this price. And I looked at him and said, well, seems like a good price. And he said, it's a full deal, so you can just go right in. Well, I was standing with my family, so I wouldn't do that anyway. But then I get up there and I open it up and the entry ticket is gone. I paid for the ticket, so I didn't lose anything, but the man deceived me. And if I had only had that much money, I couldn't have gotten in because I would have already spent it. Deception has no good end. No good end. The end does not justify the means, which is not the whole point of my sermon, but it certainly fits well into this. When we look at this and we see with all the deception of wickedness for those who are perishing, I'm going to finish up with this point because it's going to take us the rest of the time. When I looked at that word perishing, I thought, I wonder really ultimately what that means. Well, this is the definition that I got from the lexicon and so on and so forth. It says it's a combination of two words. It means from something near, and in composition with something else, it means separation, departure, completion, reversal. And then it's coupled with to destroy. So ruin, punishment, destruction, therefore, to be destroyed or to perish. So when we read this word, the perish, it's similar to, when you put something in the refrigerator and after 12 weeks you go in and it's perished. That is, you wouldn't want to eat it. But obviously it's bigger than that. And here are some cross references that I found that use this word, and I think you'll catch the concept. In Matthew chapter 2, verse 13, this is how it reads. Now, when they had gone, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream and said, "Get up, take the child and his mother and flee to Egypt, and remain there until I tell you, for Herod is going to search for the child to destroy him." We understand what that means. And with Herod, it would have been uglier than we can even read here. A little further on, Matthew chapter 8, verses 23 through 25, one of the stories we remember. When Jesus got into the boat, his disciples followed him. And behold, there arose a great storm on the sea, so that the boat was being covered with the waves. But Jesus himself was asleep. I love that story. And they came to him and woke him, saying, "Save us, Lord, we are perishing." We are going to be destroyed. We're going to die, we're going to drown, and it's going to be done for us. Matthew 26, verse 52. Then Jesus said to him, "Put your sword away back into its place, for all those who take up the sword shall perish by the sword." So, stab, stab, stab. Okay, got it. Mark chapter 1, verses 23, 24. Just then there was a man in their synagogue with an unclean spirit, and he cried out, saying, "What business do we have with each other, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us?" And this is the demons inside this man who say to him, is this the time? Are you here to cause our end in the lake of fire, to destroy us? So we see that this word is also used in the spiritual sense, not just the physical sense of killing a baby or drowning in the ocean or in the sea. Luke chapter 19, verse 47. And Jesus was teaching daily in the temple, but the chief priests and the scribes and the leading men among the people were trying to destroy him, which ultimately, we find that they did on the cross in that sense. John 3:16, I love. For God loved the world in this manner, that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in him shall not perish, but have everlasting life. So that's a perfect illustration of the use of this word in all of this. I've got two more. 1 Corinthians 1:18. For the word of the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing, but to us who are being saved it is the power of God. So those who are perishing. And it's one of these terrible things that as they live this life, they are still perishing because their journey is not that way. Their journey is that way. They are in the process. 2 Corinthians 2:15, the last one. For we are a fragrance of Christ to God among those who are being saved and among those who are perishing. Which I wanted to put in here. There was a lot more. I chose these because I wanted us to see that amidst all this concept of those who perish is us. We're amidst this group, and yet we are not on the road to perishing. We are in and on the road to life in Jesus Christ. Whereas with all the deception of wickedness for those who are perishing, the conclusion on that is because they did not receive the love of the truth so as to be saved. So you think about what we're covering here this morning, and the topic, yes, is the man of lawlessness, but is that the topic? Is that really the topic? Or is it speaking to God's people, saying there's this path, it's my path, it's my timetable. And from Adam and Eve all the way down the line, the redemption of the cross, the ascension, the coming again, the tribulation period of 7 years, the millennial reign, the conclusion, that's my path. You guys are a part of that. You're not on the path of perishing, but you're on the path of redemption. Look down the road. Look down the road. Look down the road. I'm coming. And my presence, you get to participate in. Will it be a small little thing? No, I still get goosebumps. So we'll deal with that phrase next week as we begin, because they did not receive the love of the truth so as to be saved. And all of our hearts in here, I'm sure we know people that have heard, either from our lips or from a sermon or from something. They've heard the truth, and yet they smirk at you, laugh at you, shine you on, say, I'll get to it someday. It breaks my heart. Well, this week belongs to the Lord. You belong to the Lord. The path continues. It's a path that has an end. And our part is to live such that when that end happens, we'll do this with a smile on our face, rather than what so many others will have to do, this with the fear of God in their hearts, and it won't be good. Father, the amazing thing in all this, as we gather this morning as family and friends on this road and out of town, and we've gathered together. We've gathered together to worship you. It's been our pleasure. In all of that, we are confronted with the fact that there's some unpleasantries in this life. And that shouldn't be a surprise to us, because there are those who hate us for the simple fact that we're whatever. We're tall, we're short, we're white, we're not white. We know Jesus, we love Jesus, we belong to a church, we belong to a country. There's just people that hate us for no reason. But the thing is, you love us. You know our name, you know who we are, you know where we are. And you have a plan for us, and we're a part of your plan. Lord, guide us continually and faithfully as you've promised down this path, and may we not lose sight of you. May we not lose sight of the goal. May we not lose sight of the end. Lord, as always, take us from where we are and lead us to where we need to be for Christ's sake. In his name.